A Cold War dinosaur in the digital age. Picture a battlefield. The thunder of artillery, the whistle of incoming rounds, and amidst the chaos, a steel behemoth, a tank. For many, it's the ultimate symbol of raw, unshakable power, an impenetrable fortress on tracks. Tanks like the T-72, T-80, and T-90. For decades, those names inspired both dread and respect. Their silhouettes are instantly recognizable. Their names have become legend. But what if I told you that the primary shield of these machines, their protective skin, their main defense against killer blows, is now more like a paper wall? What if the technology designed to save the crews inside is hopelessly outdated, a relic from the last century fighting a war from the next? This isn't just a technical question. It's a matter of life and death. It's the story of how simplicity and low cost became a trap, luring thousands of tons of steel and the men inside them into a death trap. Today, we're breaking down a system called Contact. We'll see why it no longer works, why it's still being used, and what the consequences are. Brace yourselves, it's a rough ride. Part 1. Contact. A genius past or an obsolete present? What is Contact, and where did it come from? To understand the depth of the problem, we have to go back to the past, to the era of the Cold War. It was the 1970s. The main threat to tanks was no longer kinetic energy shells, but heat warheads, high-explosive anti-tank. Their principle is brilliantly simple. The explosion forms a thin, super-fast jet of molten metal and gas that burns through armor like a blowtorch through butter. Against this jet, conventional steel armor was almost powerless. To stop it, the thickness required would be simply astronomical. So, Soviet engineers made a revolution, without exaggeration. They proposed not to stop the threat, but to meet it with an explosion. Thus, the Contact Explosive Reactive Armor, ERA, was born. How it works explained simply. Imagine a brick wall. You hit it with a battering ram. The wall cracks, but holds. That's passive armor. Now, imagine that on this wall, there are small, shaped explosive charges. When the ram approaches the wall, these charges detonate towards it. The blast wave and flying metal plates deform, disrupt, and destroy the tip of the ram before it even touches the wall itself. The ram's impact power drops drastically, and the wall holds. That's Contact. Technically, it looked like this. Metal bricks, containers, were bolted onto the tank's armor. Inside were two flat elements of high explosive heat set at an angle. This setup was safe for its own side. It couldn't be set off by bullets or shrapnel. But when that heat jet touched it, a sensor would trigger, and the explosive would detonate. The blast would throw metal plates into the path of the jet, slicing it apart and destroying it. It was genius, cheap, and effective. A tank covered in these bricks became several times more resilient to the anti-tank missiles, ATGMs, of that era. The modification Contact 5, which appeared in the mid-80s, was an answer to new armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot, APFSDS, rounds, learning to disrupt them as well. The golden age and the beginning of the end. In its day, Contact was a real game-changer. It gave Western designers headaches. T-72 tanks fitted with ERA became a formidable opponent. The system was absurdly simple to produce, could be stamped out en masse, and installed even on older tanks, radically boosting their survivability. But, as so often happens, its simplicity became its Achilles heel. While the Soviet and later Russian military rested on its laurels, the world didn't stand still. An adversary always finds an antidote. Part 2. Anatomy of a vulnerability. Why Contact stopped working. The critical flaws of the system began to show as soon as potential adversaries had the time and resources to study it. And they didn't find just one weakness, but a whole series of them. 1. The speed problem, shell versus missile. This is the primary and most fatal flaw. Contact was perfect against relatively slow anti-tank missiles, which travel at speeds of 200 to 300 meters per second. They have time to fly. The system has time to react. But what happens when a Contact brick is hit not by a missile, but by a heat shell fired from a tank gun? Its speed is about 900 meters per second. That's 3 to 4 times faster. The physics is simple and merciless. The hardened steel tip of such a shell smashes through the thin, just 3 millimeters thick, steel cover of the contact container before the explosive inside can detonate. Imagine trying to flip a light switch after you've already been shot. You're too late. The heat jet forms and passes through an already deformed, damaged container. The ERA element either doesn't work at all or works asymmetrically with a delay. Its effectiveness drops catastrophically. For all intents and purposes, it's almost useless, and the shell calmly burns through the armor. Studies conducted back in the 90s and 2000s showed that the probability of modern heat shells of that time penetrating armor protected by contact 5 was close to 90%. 2. The tandem warhead, a strike at the heart. If speed is one workaround, the tandem warhead is a direct and cynical hack of the system. Western designers thought, okay, you have explosive armor? We'll just send 2 greetings in a row. How does it work? In the warhead of a modern anti-tank missile, like the American Javelin or the German Panzerfaust, there isn't one but 2 shaped charges. The first, a small one, is called a precursor charge. Its job is simple. Fly toward the tank and detonate right on that contact explosive reactive armor element. What happens? The contact element activates, explodes, creates a cloud of explosion products and plates. It seems like it did its job, but no, it was a trap. While the first ERA element is destroyed, following the precursor, with a microsecond delay, comes the main, much more powerful shaped charge. And it flies through the now destroyed protection. Nothing stands in its way. The tank's armor is completely naked before it. Contact is helpless against a tandem warhead, like a child. It was created for single charges, and this architectural limitation became its death sentence. 3. The new age of threats. War from a bird's eye view. If in the 80s and even 90s the main tank killers were other tanks and AEGMs, today the battlefield has changed beyond recognition. A new, ubiquitous, and deadly opponent has appeared: the drone. FPV drones, first-person view, these small, cheap, and incredibly precise machines have become a nightmare for any armored vehicle. The pilot sees the video feed from the drone's camera in VR goggles and can steer it into virtually any part of tank. Now, remember where contact is placed, mostly on the front and sides. What about the roof of the turret? The engine grill? The rear? These areas are either lightly protected or not protected at all. An FPV drone carrying a heat warhead can easily attack the tank from above, where reactive armor is absent by design. Contact is utterly useless against such an attack. Bomb-dropping copters, an even simpler tactic. A drone simply hovers over a tank and drops a grenade or small shaped charge onto it. The fall from a height of several dozen meters provides enough kinetic energy to pierce the thin top armor. And again, contact is silent. It wasn't designed for threats from directly above. Economic briefing and analysis. Why can't they just replace it? Here we come to the most painful and interesting question. If it's all so bad, if the system was obsolete 20 years ago, why do thousands of Russian tanks still sport these outdated bricks? The answer lies not in the realm of tactics or technology, but in economics and logistics. 1. The bottom line. Let's look at the numbers, approximate, but reflecting the scale. According to various expert estimates and open source data, the cost of a contact ERA kit for one tank can be between $15,000 and $30,000. That's pocket change in terms of a defense budget. Now, let's take its modern replacement, the relict system. Its development, testing, and production deployment are colossal investments. The cost of a kit for one tank could be 5, even 10 times higher. Multiply that by several thousand tanks in service and in storage. You get astronomical figures. For an army trying to maintain a huge fleet of equipment, the low cost of contact is the deciding factor. 2. Established production. The factories that produce contact have been doing so for decades. The technologies are refined, supply chains are established, personnel are trained. Retooling all that for a new, more complex system is years of work and billions of rubles. It's simpler and cheaper to keep stamping out the old, proven product. 3. Logistics and repair. War is not just fighting, but constant repair. Imagine you have thousands of tanks with contact in the field. You have warehouses full of these bricks, repair crews that can replace a dozen damaged elements in a day in field conditions. Now try to introduce Relict. These are new containers, different mounting systems, new logistics, new training for mechanics. It's a giant organizational headache. For the perfect is the enemy of the good principle. Military leadership often follows this logic. Why spend huge sums re-equipping all tanks when you can spend that same money on producing new tanks like the T-14 Armada or other types of weapons? It's better to have 1,000 tanks with outdated protection than 100 tanks with modern protection. Quantity, alas, often trumps quality. Part 3, what's next? Alternatives and the future. The situation certainly looks grim, but it's not like the problem isn't understood in Russia. It is, and very well. It's just that the replacement process is agonizingly slow. Relict, the direct air. This is the next generation of explosive reactive armor. It lacks many of Contact's flaws. Effective against tandem warheads. Relict uses a different layout and, according to some reports, different explosives, allowing it to better counter the precursor charge and not leave the main charge a clear path. Better protection against shells. Its elements are more resistant to high-speed impact. Modularity. It's more versatile and can be installed on different platforms. But, as we've established, its mass distribution is hampered by money and time. Afghanet. Next-generation protection. This system, installed on the T-14 Armada tank, is not just reactive armor, but a hard-kill active protection system, APS. This is a fundamentally different level. Afghanet includes a radar that detects incoming shells and missiles and fires countermeasures to destroy the threat before it even hits the armor. It's like a missile defense system for a single tank. But the Armada is a boutique, expensive tank, and its serial production status is questionable at best. Waiting for APS to appear on all tanks is not realistic. Surviving the new era. Cope cages and cages. While generals and engineers think about a global system replacement, soldiers on the front lines are solving the problem here and now. This is why we see tanks plastered with strange structures. Wooden crates, sandbags, rubber mats, spare track links, and, most notably, massive anti-cumulative screens over the turret roof, so-called cope cages or barbecues. This isn't out of desperation. It's grassroots modernization. These elements are meant to detonate tandem warheads prematurely, forcing them to activate too early. Protect the vulnerable roof from drones and dropped munitions. Change the angle at which the heat jet hits, reducing its effectiveness. And you know what? Often, these improvised methods work better than the standard issue Contact against modern threats. This vividly illustrates the gap between the demands of the time and the capabilities of standard systems. Epilogue. The cost of a mistake and a lesson for the future. The story of Contact is a classic tale of technological stagnation. It's a lesson that you can't rest on the laurels of past successes. What was a breakthrough yesterday can be a death trap today. A tank with Contact in a modern war is not so much a threat as it is a target. A target for artillery, for modern ADGMs, for cheap drones costing a few $100s. The ratio between the price of destroyed equipment and the price of the tool that destroyed it has become catastrophic. This situation isn't the fault of a single tanker or commander. It's a systemic problem, the result of years of decisions, or a lack thereof, in defense planning and funding. It's a choice in favor of quantity, made many years ago, being paid for today in blood. Will be fixed? Sooner or later, yes. But the question is, how many more steel giants must turn into burning pyres on the battlefields before this lesson is finally learned? Well, that's the story. Grim, uncomfortable, but real. I've only shared a fraction of what I know. This topic is bottomless. What do you think about all this? Do you see modern tanks with relict in photos and videos from the front? Or is it still mostly Contact? How do you think this problem could be solved faster? Write your thoughts, observations, and guesses in the comments below. Let's discuss this together. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell so you don't miss our next investigations where we'll talk about other weapons, tactics, and technologies of modern warfare. Your engagement helps the channel grow. Thanks for sticking with us until the end.